What's up everybody, LP here, back at it again with a new video. Today I have my top 4 finishing GOAT Grand Prix Illinois deck list, so let's go ahead and get right into it. So for starters, of course, we play the triple Giant Rat. This is a Panda burn list, right? So the idea was Giant Rat gets out your Panda. I tried playing 2, I really was reluctant to play all 3, but it just came up so many times in testing that against different decks, especially Warrior and other aggro decks that you play, especially in the mirror, Giant Rat can be really pivotal to have all 3. Triple Panda, of course. People cut it down to 2. I like 3 because Panda's the card you want to get, right? So it just makes sense. I like maxing out on cards that you should. The one Fairy Lily because it ends games. Exile Force to pull off Giant Rat as an out to Jinzo. Sangan searches all of these monsters. And then, of course, you have your one Breaker for your Royal Decrees and your one Tribes. That hits your Jama tokens on your opponent's side of the field. Hits your opponent Jizno. Hits your opponent's Chaos Monsters. It's cracked. And of course, Morphing Jar and Cyber Jar. Cyber Jar was the most insane card of this deck because I would flip this proactively because what would happen was my opponents wouldn't knock it, they would just leave it face down on their turn. So when it came back to my turn, I'm like, well, I'm not going to wait for you to attack into it. I'm going to proactively flip it in my main phase, get a bunch of advantage, set all my burn cards, get more monsters on board, start poking, and then draw phase on my opponent's turn, kill them. The reason Cyber Jar is like the best card in this deck because it adds 1,000 points of damage to your Secret Barrel no matter what. So that's at minimum. It could add way more to your Justice Earth. It could add way more to your Ceasefire. But at minimum, it's an extra 1,000 by flipping it for your Secret Barrel. So that's pretty good. And that's it for the monsters. Very small monster count. Of course, we play the traps. 3 Trio, 3 Justice Earth, 3 Secret Barrel, 1 Ceasefire, 1 Ring. These are your main burn traps. Ojama Trio is self-explanatory. It gets your opponent's board loaded. You can Ojama lock them. It makes your Panda bigger. Makes your Secret Barrel better. It makes your Justice Earth better. It's just like the heart and soul of the deck. Justice Earth, self-explanatory. I've seen people, again, cut down the 2 Justice Earths. Doesn't make sense. Justice Earth burns for every monster. Doesn't have to be effect monsters like Ceasefire. And you're typically, I'm always hitting at least 1,500 off a Justice Earths whenever I flip it. Secret Barrel is, I really enjoy Secret Barrel. I like Justice Earths more because a lot of opponents that I play tend to be a little more monster heavy, but Secret Barrel came up against a lot of those Chaos Turbo players and Chaos players in general, of which there were a lot, especially, like I said, in combination with Cyber Jar. It's insane. And Ring ended game. Ceasefire was very underwhelming at the tournament. I wish I could say more about it, but I barely even drew the card anyway, so that's it for burn traps. And then we play the 2 Gravity Bind and the 1 Mirror Force. So people don't like removal in Panda Burn because the whole point of the deck is for your opponent to have monsters. But there's a time when if your opponent has more tempo than you do, especially against Warrior players, you need to clear the board. And it doesn't matter if you have a couple burn cards in your hand if your opponent has game on board and they're attacking and swinging into you. So that's why I do play the 1 Mirror Force. Gravity Bind, super lackluster this tournament. May think about cutting in the future. I don't know. Onto the spells. Start of the deck, Triple Chain Energy. This card is insane. I'm not gonna lie, this card is absolutely cracked. The amount of times that my opponent just couldn't play the game because they were just taxing themselves to death was great. Every time if you got this up turn 1 against a Chaos Turbo player, they're just spending 1,000, 1,500 life points just to get set up by their Pot of Greed, their Thunder Dragons, not their Thunder Dragons, their Pot of Greed, their Grateful Charities, and just T-setting and passing is costing them 1,500, 1,000, sometimes even 2,000 life. I had my opponent, he opted you know what, let's go in, set 4 back row, set a monster, took 2,500 points of damage. On the end step, I flipped the Secret Barrel, and it was Trio, Secret Barrel, and that just ended his life. So that was just card's insane. I played 2 Trunade, 1 Heavy, 1 MST. The reason being I didn't play triple Trunade and nothing else is because Trunade was always kind of a clog. 2 is the perfect ratio. You have to play the Heavy and the MST to out your opponent's Royal Decree. This deck lost to Royal Decree and it lost to Jinzo, of which I saw many people main decking Jinzo and many people main decking Royal Decree, which is crazy. But MST is an insane card for that reason specifically, because if you have it set, you can just snipe the Royal Decree when they chain it. So if you go chain 1 burn card, they go chain 2 Royal Decree, you go chain 3 MST, that feels nice. Whereas you can't do that with Giant Trunade. I see a lot of lists just play the 3 Trunade and no removal spells for the same reason that you want your opponent to have cards, but it doesn't, you can't, if your opponent has a bunch of cards and they have a Royal Decree, doesn't matter what your burn cards do at that point. Last two stall spells, level limit area B. Again, this card was super lackluster for me as well. Um, it's a little conflicting, and you'll see when it comes to the side, it's a little conflicting, but for games one, this card underperformed. But again, still testing, thinking about this card. And of course, the last four are your Charity and Greed and your Snatch and Premature. Again, these are just should be in every GOAT deck. Onto the side now. So for the side, we played against Chaos decks, 2 Nox, 2 Kaikos. That was kind of the main point of having these cards coming in. I thought about doing a third Kaiko, but we'll get to the rest of the side deck and you'll see. Against Warriors, we would play triple Sakuretsu Armor and triple Berserk Gorilla. Warriors, I thought was going to be the most represented deck. I thought it was going to be the most represented deck at this tournament. However, I was sorely mistaken. It was actually Chaos. And Panda Burn had a huge showing too. But I was really prepared for the Warrior matchup. I went with these cards specifically and maxing out on them because Sakuretsu Armor, again, adds to removal, the 1-for-1 trades for hitting their big monsters. And Berserk Gorilla, if they don't answer it, because they have to answer it with either a Zombraya, hit it with an Exiled Force, or have it booked, anything like that. If they don't have the answer, it's poking in for 2,000 every turn, and it's automatically eating up a removal spell that could be used against your Panda, or could be used against your Giant Rat, something like that. Berserk Gorilla, I think, is an insane side deck card. It might even be main deck worthy in the future, but we'll see. But this is the card I was talking about that conflicts with level limit area B, because if you have a Berserk Gorilla up, you can't really activate that level limit area B, so you're just kind of stuck with it. And then the last couple cards in the side deck were Triple Wabaku. This is for, I'll put it like this. Triple Wabaku, this is for the Reasoning Gate matchup. I played against one Reasoning Gate player, and I didn't draw it, so can't say how it performed. And the last two cards in the side deck were 2 Poison of the Old Mans. Now you're like, why are you playing Poison of the Old Man? The reason being, this card is a quick play spell card that either burns your opponent or gives you life. So everyone's playing their Mystic Walk to tribute some low attack point monster, tribute sometimes a token, whatever they have, just to gain whatever little bit of life they have, so they don't get affected by your burn cards and they're not losing to ring or whatever the answer is. Poison the Old Man increases your life by 1,200 flat, you don't have to do anything. Or it can be chained. That's the biggest part about why I like this card. It can be chained to an opponent's Heavy Storm, MST, Breaker, whatever they have to remove your back row. You can chain this card to it, and you can burn your opponent. And then that 800, that's a 10th of their life gone. So that actually makes a pretty big difference. I was convinced to play this card last minute over, originally these were 2, what were they called? The Death Koalas. Those were also for against the Chaos Mirror, or not Chaos Mirror, Chaos matchup. Because if my opponent had, 6, 7 cards in hand, and then they attacked into the Koala, they take whatever damage, because it's got 1,800 defense, and then they take that, 6, 7, so what is that, like 2,400, 2,800 points of damage? But that never came up. I tested against Chaos so often, and the amount of times that my opponent would just have the knock for it instead, it just wasn't worth the slot in my side deck to even go into it. That's why I preferred the Poison the Old Man any day of the week over that card. So this card definitely needs some more testing, but give it a try if you're Panda Bird list. Alright, what's going on, everybody? I just want to talk about my matchups, what I thought of the event, how the event went, and just kind of talking at the camera for a little bit. First into my matchups, round 1, I played against the Mirror. It was another Panda Burn player. The game went to game 3. He was a really cool guy, really cool dude. I think his name was Ian. Really good Panda Burn player, I will say. It just came back to who had burn cards first in game 3. But there was a point in the game, it was really fun. There was like 3 or 4 chain energies on the field, and every card was like 2,000 or 1,500 life. It was something ridiculous like that. So something like that's always funny to see. Game 2 was against Chaos Turbo, 2 Odin, expected. Game 3, Chaos Control. Went to game 3. He was just on some really jank, just on everything. He was playing Thunder Dragons, Blade Knights, Chaos Monsters, bunch of trap cards. I was like, alright, just throw everything in the kitchen sink, call it a deck. That was a really fun matchup. Round 4 is my first loss. That was against another Chaos Control player. It went to game 3. In game 1, he had main deck Jizno, and like I just couldn't do anything about that. He slapped the Jinzo on board like turn 2 or turn 3. I was like, oh, I have no chainables. Nice. So that's kind of how that went. Game 3, it just went to a really good grind. It just happened that he went to a simplified game state. No monsters on board, no nothing. He just drew a bigger monster first, so it happens. Round 5 was against a Chaos Control player. Dude clapped me up. It was the guy who won the whole thing. He had King Tiger Wanghu and Des Wombat games too, and that hurt a lot. Like, he just slapped the Wanghu. I was like, all right, I can't do much about that. Then he slapped the Wombat, and I was like, all right, this isn't happening. And then after that, he just kind of sealed the deal. So you just kept your head up high and move on to the next one. Round 6 was against Zombie. That was a really good player, really cool deck. 2-0'd him though. And round 7 was against another Chaos Turbo deck. That was a really interesting match. It was really good back and forth for game 1. Definitely good game. Then games 2, I got him down to 1200 life. He had 4 cards in hand, and he was drawing 1 for turn. I'm like, okay. I had 1 Secret Barrel face down, and that was it. And so I'm like, okay, if he draws for turn, that's only 1,000. He hopefully, gets more cards, pot agree, whatever. So he draws for turn, shuffles his hand, drops down a Thunder Dragon. Okay, well, is he going to add 1 and then pitch 1 and then add 1 to play around? Or is he going to just add 2 and then I get the win? So he adds 2 Thunder Dragons to hand. I'm like, oh, nice. Secret Barrel, burn for 12, and that was kind of it. I felt bad for the guy. He was kind of upset, but that's just the game. And then after round 7, it was 7 rounds of Swiss. Then it cut to Top Cut. So in Top Cut, the top 16 match, I played against a Chaos Turbo player. Those were really fun. That was a really good matchup. He was a really good player. That's just a lot of fun. It was game 2. He Trinity'd me, so I was like, oh, cool. Wasn't winning that one. But he delinquent duo'd me every single game, which was like really unfortunate. But games 1 and 3, I was still able to clap him up. In top 8, I played against the only Warrior deck. I was so prepared for Warrior, and it was the only Warrior deck I faced. He went undefeated in Swiss, so I was like, okay, this guy has no losses this whole tournament so far. That's kind of crazy. So I handed him his first loss. It was just some really good back and forth. He was playing some really interesting decks too. He had a Robin Goblin in his deck. And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting deck. I might have to try that in my Warrior deck going forward. But game 3, it was just kind of like disgusting. We got to a simplified game state. He has low life because he had been using all his resources to avoid Secret Barrel. So it got to a point where I normal summoned Cyberjar and swung for game. That was kind of funny. Round 10, which is top 4. This is where I lost. I played against the guy who got second place. I definitely could have gone 3 games, but it ended into I definitely had a way to win that game too. He had all his monsters on board. He had reasoning and gated and womboed and comboed, but he didn't kill me. So I was like, okay, I can clap back. I drew a Snatch Steal. I took his BLS and I tried to swing. I did my math wrong. I left him with like 300 life, and I was like, well, it is what it is, man. So that happens. That's where I got eliminated in top 4. I was kind of upset. I wasn't too like mad or like sad, but I was like upset that I didn't get the world invite. I really wanted to play to get the world's invite. That was the whole point of the tournament, right? So this was all done at TGS Tinley Park. This was one of the best game stories. They decided to ran this Go Format Grand Prix, Illinois. This was on Saturday, and it was just a really cool overall event. Again, like I said, 7 rounds of Swiss with cut the top 16 and then top cut after that. It was a really good event. It was my first time going to an event at this magnitude. First time I ever filled a deck list out for an event. It was really cool going 7 rounds in Swiss and like being exhausted. It's like, oh, time for top cut. So I ended up playing only 10 rounds, but still I had never played that many rounds in a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament all in one sitting. So I was definitely exhausted. I definitely, next time I do an event like this, need to be a little more prepared. Speaking of preparation, definitely need to evaluate the field. I had predicted a lot more Warrior decks, so I was a lot more prepared for Warrior. But the Chaos was like over 50% of the field was Chaos, and that was a really surprising thing to see. Chaos Turbo ended up taking the whole thing, but I was just very surprised to see Chaos take up that much representation. And my side deck wasn't necessarily tailored to the different styles of Chaos that they were playing. That's one thing to definitely take in the future as well. But yeah, it was a really good event. Everyone I played with was really cool, really nice. There were people from all over the states and some people from Canada too that came to this event. So I was definitely really, really surprised at the numbers we pulled. I think it was like 68 people. Just an overall awesome event, awesome time. Definitely a really cool experience. I'm definitely going to keep playing Panda Burn and keep playing with it, keep toying with the burn aspect. I definitely have a couple spicy techs in my head I'm thinking about to up this deck and keep making it fresh and new. I really think that Panda Burn, this kind of solidifies Panda Burn as a really good top deck Because the other thing too was that the amount of people I saw that were prepared for Panda Burn, everyone had Mystic Walks, Wombats, and Royal Decrees, and people were main decking Jinsno. And I was like, all right, that kind of hurts, but it goes to show that people are thinking about Panda Burn as a real deck, and they're like preparing for it severely. People cited in like 6-7 cards I'd see come in. I'm like, oh, those weren't in game one. Many cards come in for Panda Burn, and so it goes to show just a testament to this deck and how good it is, and how much people fear it. And so now that we know people are siding against us, the deck becomes a lot less powerful. But still, in games 2 and 3, you would kind of have to pivot your strategy anyway, because that's how Panda Burn works. I think that in games 2 and 3, the deck should definitely pivot toward more aggression, because they're already prepared for your traps, mostly with Royal Decrees, Jizno, Mobius, and Wombat. So you need to have something that's bigger. That's why I had the Berserk Gorillas. I definitely think you could side into, what's it called? The Goblin Lead Attack Force. Anything that's like 2,000 or over, you can just kind of plop down the board and swing into it, and you slide out your stall cards, obviously. But you would have to just play super aggressive and get your opponent that way. That's the way that the deck traditionally has been played, so just keeping up with that aspect, I think, is something that's really important. Otherwise, this deck is a game 1 deck, and when you don't win game 1, which I lost in rounds 4 and 5, I did not win game 1, and those were my only losses in Swiss. So if you don't win game 1 with this deck, it's not a good sign for you. But definitely, once you're winning, if you win game 1, it's kind of a free win. So that's how I think the deck is played. Again, just shout out to TGS and Tinley Park, definitely one of the best game stores in Illinois. Shout out to everyone that came down. Shout out to my testing partner and everyone who helped me prep for this event. This was a really cool event. I can't wait for more GOAT Grand Prix in the future, and hopefully you'll see me at Worlds one day. Alright guys, take care. If you guys have been watching up to this video to this point so far, I appreciate you, every single last one of you. Thanks so much. Peace.